Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Miracle Readiness. I'm natekokernot, and I am moving through the COA version of ACIM. We are on Chapter 3, Section 8 today, and today's section is the essential goal of therapy. I am going to mention, since this is a apt time to mention, I am a therapist, uh, although no longer a licensed therapist because at least as the story I tell myself, I was doing this as closely to the way that, of course, in Miracles, Jesus is directing me to. And the system itself is still very, I didn't find this out until the complaint was made, but it's more aligned with the idea that recognizing somebody else's pathology should be part of the healing process. To me, that's an absurd idea, and I refused, and I did so quite transparently, just giving everybody, because I wanted to get paid by insurance, I gave everybody what you call adjustment disorder, F43.20, according to the DSM-5, the Bible of Pathology. And I did that very transparently, and I got in trouble and lost my license. But I'm still a therapist. I still work with a few people by donation. And if you are interested in therapy, this would be a good time to mention I am available. And you can just look down. I would say contact me through the website, not through the comment section. And we can make arrangements if you're interested. I do all my work by donation. If you can afford $5, great. If you can afford $100, that would be great too. Uh, but I truly just want to be helpful. And that's also why I'm moving through this workbook. So let's get right into it. This is a very fascinating section, especially for somebody who's been in this vocation. The essential goal of therapy. When two people experience a dominant submission problem, it is often related to the perceived opposition between helping and being helped. The dominant submission problem is when one person feels dominant or above, and the other person feels submissive or subordinate. And remember, I skipped section 1 of chapter 2. I started with chapter 2, section 2, this whole series. And that first section is actually about the dominant submission problem, even though it's kind of relating it more to sex than it is to therapy. But they're all related. This is a misperception resulting from the failure to recognize the equal worth of both individuals in the interaction. There can be no confusion on this point, and no strain if this confusion is not introduced. Such confusion may be experienced by a person when someone else is trying to help him. He is likely to feel that this puts him in a subordinate position if he thinks he should be the therapist. Obviously, there is no problem once it is recognized that the equal worth of each person precludes this misperception, since both gain in such a transaction. It is impossible for anybody to ever lose anything when this is fully recognized. This is what recognizing your brother is all about. 3. The prerequisites for therapy must include the following conditions. 1. The procedure must involve the recognition rather than the denial of the importance of thought. I'll stop here and just say that thought vigilance was essentially the core of my practice because I was working with people obviously who weren't um, necessarily wanting to follow Jesus in his teachings. Uh, and because after I started doing the workbook myself, I started practicing thought vigilance, which meant watching my thoughts and recognizing which thoughts were not conducive to my peace, my joy, and my love, and then sending those thoughts packing. I had a visualization of a cloud dissipating. There's another course teacher named Lisa Natoli who really, the core of her message, from what I know, I don't follow her closely, but the core of her message is watch your thoughts like a hawk. And do not let those errant ego thoughts slip by unnoticed because, again, your thoughts are the most creative part of your experience here, or the activity that you engage in that has the most significance on your experience is thinking. So, idle thought is a complete myth. There are no idle thoughts. It's actually interesting that in the psycho, there's a pamphlet that's not in the COA version to psychotherapy, and he talks in there about just how much it seems to him that therapists focus on, oh, that's just a thought, don't worry about it. You're just thinking it, it doesn't have any effect on anything, which is the exact opposite of the truth. Uh, this whole section is really interesting in that you can see very clearly how it's not even slightly focused on behavior. Well, only in the sense of like perceived behavior. What A Course in Miracles is all about correcting is perception through thought. Okay, it's not about behavior. Accountability is for what we perceive in A Course in Miracles, not how we behave. Because he's going to get to it, so I won't go too far into it right now. Okay, so the prerequisites for therapy must include the recognition of the importance of thought, one. Two, the exact equality of everyone who is involved must also be recognized. This must include me. Three, no one is either therapist or patient. You could add teacher or pupil. Yeah, this is true on the level of knowledge. We were talking about knowledge and perception in the last episode. You could refer to the notes if you have them still about what's knowledge and what's perception. Where, as a subsequent paragraph states, the therapist is not a better knower than the patient. However, on the level of perception, there is a role for therapists and teachers, as this section makes clear. So I think, the spirit in all of us, the Holy Spirit in all of us, is basically like a replica. We're all clones of each other in the spirit department. Um, in the personality department, which I think is ego derived, yes, we all have different gifts, abilities, strengths. Um, and some of us do have a better perception or a better ability to perceive things correctly than others. Above all, this is 4, above all, everyone involved must want to give up everything that is not true. That's the key. The reason for the negative emphasis here is that therapy implies something has gone wrong, although the purpose of therapy is to correct this, really to correct the belief that anything has gone wrong. Those who are ill are negative. Therapy is exactly the same as all other forms of miracle working. It has no separate laws of its own. All of the principles that were given for miracles apply to therapy because unless therapy proceeds from miracle-mindedness, it cannot heal. The therapist, hopefully, does have the role of being the better perceiver. This is also, again, hopefully true of the teacher. It does not follow that he is the better knower. In other words, both therapist and patient, in their true nature, have an equal ability to know reality. On the level of knowledge, they are equals. Temporarily, the therapist or teacher can help in straightening out twisted perceptions, which is also the only role that I would ever contribute myself. All therapy should do is try to place everyone involved in the right frame of mind to help one another. Back to that part about the teacher-pupil uh, and being both. Yeah, that was definitely my experience as a therapist. I always said the truly helpful prayer. I'm here only to be truly helpful. I'm here to represent him who sent me. I don't have to worry about what to say or what to do, because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. So I always said that right before every session, and that I didn't plan for sessions and just trusted what came up. Uh, what my responses were just like me trusting what was coming into my intuition to say. And the reason I mention this is because there were so many times when I would say something and it would be like, oh, that's for me, not for them. I needed to hear that. I wouldn't say that out loud. It would just be like a kind of light bulb in my mind as right after I said it. I'd be like, oh, this is important for me. And then there were things that my clients would share that were important for me to hear too. So there really was an equal give and take. It is essentially a process of true courtesy, including courtesy to me. You should know that all God's children are fully worthy of complete courtesy. There are ways of treating others in which only consistent courtesy, even in very little things, is offered. It is a very healing habit to acquire. So here's where the behavior perception dichotomy gets really interesting. This is paragraph 7. Any form of mental illness can truthfully be described as an expression of viciousness. And I'm not going to read that footnote. We said before that those who are afraid are apt to be vicious. If we were willing to forgive other people's misperceptions of us, they could not possibly affect us at all. There is little doubt that you can explain your present attitudes in terms of how people used to look at you, but there is no wisdom in doing so. In fact, the whole historical approach can justifiably be called doubtful. The historical approach here refers to trying to understand a person based on his or her history. A large number of my clients wanted to kind of study their past and explain how they got to be the way that they are through their past. And I was never too eager to go on that ride with them. But I would listen and I'd offer my perspective. And right now he's going to go into talking about our parents. And this is just one example, although, like in therapy, yes, people tend to focus more on their parents and than other people as they're doing their self-investigative work as to why they're so messed up. And I don't want you to think of what he's going to say in the next few paragraphs as just about parent-child relationships. It's all special relationships. Consider your parents, for example. The discussion of parents was originally addressed to Bill, who felt wounded by his parents' lack of appreciation of his worth. No one has adopted all of his parents' attitudes as his own. In every case, there has been a long process of choice in which the individual has escaped from those he himself vetoed, while retaining those he voted for. For instance, someone might not have retained his parents' political beliefs because he believed he was free in this area. Yet he might still have retained their misperception of his worth. In this case, there must be some acute problem of his own that would make him so eager to accept this. This tendency can always be regarded as punitive. In other words, he is so eager to internalize their misperceptions of his worth because he wants to make them appear responsible for his pain. I think I would change the wording He wants to make them feel responsible for his pain. This desire to make them culpable is punitive. Again, that's a footnote. So I'm not correcting Jesus. I would never do that. But I think um, this is Robert Perry's words, the footnotes. And I think, yeah, I think we want to make our parents feel guilty for having made us feel unworthy. It cannot be justified by the inequality of the strengths of parents and children. This is never more than temporary, and is largely a matter of maturational and thus physical difference. It does not last unless it is held on to. So I think just a note on the editing here that if you have read the FIP version, the original version, I don't think you find sections like this in there. Uh, so many of these sections were actually addressed to Helen and Bill when they were originally written. Or when the conversation between Helen and Jesus took place. He did a lot of therapy with Helen and Bill about the issues they were dealing with in life. And so they were edited out of the FIP, and I believe this whole section might be new to anybody who's just read the FIP before. And I think that Robert Perry just determined that, it was helpful to know all of this stuff. Like, yes, while sections like these pertained to Helen and Bill's life, they also pertain to all of our lives. And so he thought, why not just let it all, unedited, come through? I'm really glad he did, because there's so many fascinating things in the COA version that I didn't find in the FIP. Paragraph 9. Why should anyone accord in obvious misperception so much problem? There cannot be any real justification for it, because even you yourself recognize the real problem when you say, how could they do this to me? A question like how could they implies that what they did made so little sense that it's shocking that it could ever happen. Jesus is essentially saying, you are right. In fact, it makes so little sense that it couldn't happen. They couldn't do this to you. Only you could give such an obvious misperception so much power over you. This is how the question, how could they do this to me, shows an underlying recognition of the real problem. There cannot be any real justification for it, because even you yourself recognize the real problem when you say, how could they do this to me? The answer is, they didn't. Paragraph 10. You have a very serious question to ask yourself in this connection. We said before that the purpose of the resurrection was to demonstrate that no amount of misperception has any influence at all on a Son of God. The demonstration exonerates those who misperceive by establishing beyond doubt that they have not hurt anyone. Your question, which you must ask yourself very honestly, is whether you are willing to demonstrate that your parents have not hurt you. Unless you are willing to do this, you have not forgiven them. And forgiveness is basically what therapy is all about. The essential goal of therapy is the same as that of knowledge. No one can survive independently as long as he is willing to see himself through the eyes of others. This will always put him in a position where he must see himself in different lights. Parents do not make the self-image of their children, though they may perceive images which they do make. However, as we have already said, you are not an image. If you side with image makers, you are merely being idolatrous. Now, this is a play on words, which equates making an image of a person with making a graven image, an idol. Just as an idol is a substitute for God, so our image of someone is a substitute for his real divinity. A graven image is a carved likeness that is worshipped as a god. The second commandment says, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. I'm going to just bring up a related quote from a couple chapters from now. This is from chapter 4, section 3. and it's called The Making of the Ego. Paragraph 2 states, each person makes one ego for himself, although it is subject to enormous variation because of its instability, and one for everyone he perceives, which is equally variable. In other words, an image of a separate being. We make one for us, and then we have one for everybody else. They're both entirely variable. Their interaction is a process which literally alters both because they were not made either by or with the unalterable. It is particularly important to realize that this alteration can and does occur as readily when the interaction takes place in the mind as when it involves physical presence. So thinking about another ego is as effective in changing relative perception as is physical interaction. Now that's just like a mic drop quote. Like you're literally altering your relationship with another person just by thinking about them. Uh, how you see them can be altered by just thinking about them. And that's very obvious when you think about it. Um, but we don't think about that. And we don't think how much our thoughts are affecting our view of things or people. There could be no better example of the fact that the ego is an idea, though not a reality-based thought. I think that's really important to really just see the ego for what it is. If we can change a relationship just by ruminating about someone and who they are, then we can change our image of who they are simply by doing that. And clearly, that aspect of who they are has no solid substance whatsoever. Back to section 3. Paragraph 12. You have no justification whatever for perpetuating any image of yourself at all. You are not an image. Whatever is true of you is wholly benign. It is essential that you know this about yourself, but you cannot know it while you choose to interpret yourself as vulnerable enough to be hurt. This is a peculiar kind of arrogance whose narcissistic component is perfectly obvious. The arrogance lies in believing that you have the power to endow someone with a strength he does not have. In this case, the strength to make you over. The narcissism lies in your obsession with your image, with how you appear. It endows the perceiver with sufficient unreal strength to make you over, and then acknowledges the perceiver's miscreation. Another footnote. The perceiver here is another person, in this case a parent. To acknowledge the perceiver's miscreation is to accept the truth of your parent's misperception of you, by giving that misperception the weight that only truth should have. There are times when this strange lack of real courtesy appears to be a form of humility. Actually, it is never more than simple spite. Yeah, he'll later in the course, he'll really get into talking about humility and arrogance. And what we consider humility is often arrogance. He refers to it as false humility. Your parents probably did misperceive you in many ways, but their ability to perceive may have been quite warped, and their misperceptions stood in the way of their own knowledge. There is no reason why it should stand in the way of yours. It is still true that you believe they did something to you. This belief is extremely dangerous to your perception and wholly destructive of your knowledge. Keep in mind this was directed at Bill. It might not be how you feel about your parents. This is not only true of your attitudes toward your parents, but also of your misuse of your friends. You still think that you must respond to their errors as if they were true. By reacting self-destructively, you are giving them approval for their misperceptions. No one has the right to change himself according to different circumstances. Only his actions are capable of appropriate variation. His belief in himself is a constant, unless it rests on perceptual acuity rather than knowledge of what he is. It is your duty to establish beyond doubt that you are totally unwilling to side with, identify with anyone's misperceptions of you, including your own. So now I want to read that footnote about viciousness because, of course, viciousness is something that most of us associate with a behavior. Here he's saying the exact nature of this viciousness is described below. It involves voluntarily internalizing another's low opinion of us so that we can make him appear guilty of hurting us, or when in truth we hurt ourselves by accepting the truth of the image that they have made of us. We are being vicious. Okay? And so, back to what I was saying at the beginning of this, and this is just my opinion here. I think most mental health stuff comes from the pressure to, fit in. Diagnoses are all coming from somebody else's perception of inappropriate behavior, which is image. It's body stuff. And we're always upset with what the body's doing. We're never upset with what the true person is doing. In other words, the true person is perfect Holy Spirit. So it's these concerns with behavior are concerns with the body and the image. And we basically convince other people that they're misbehaving and that the reason they're misbehaving is because they have some chemical disorder in them that they better go get fixed. So they either go down the route of a psychiatrist getting a prescription for something which will have probably 10 or 20 times as many side effects as it will have healing potential. I just love watching those commercials for pharmaceuticals where the list of side effects is so incredibly long every single time. Yeah, I don't care if it's a skin product or some treatment for bipolar disorder. Those are two that I've seen recently. There's always so many like really terrible sounding side effects that you might have that they just seem to want to just like gloss over, but they have to mention them in the commercial. And usually that part of the commercial is as long as the first part of the commercial where they're trying to plug the item. Anyways, so either, go see a shrink who's going to give you some medicine, or go see a therapist who's going to set you straight on how you're misbehaving, essentially, and what the root cause of your misbehavior is. And the real mental image is focusing on behavior in the first place. The perception of misbehavior is what we're trying to correct in therapy, in miracle-minded therapy, anyways. Okay, so that was a fun section for me, and I hope that you enjoyed it too. And I appreciate all the comments and questions, and I expect I'll get a few on this section too. Keep those coming in, folks. And hey, every once in a while, somebody poses a question in the comments that is not directed to me. And I've said this before. I think I really want to have a sense of community here, which means it's not just you and me talking. People could be talking to each other. And somebody in the last episode worded their question to get, uh, and this has happened several times before, to get opinions from other people who might be reading the comment section. And nobody has yet read one of those and answered it. I can't say nobody's read it, but nobody's answered those questions. I answered the questions that are posed to me, but not the ones that are posed to everybody else. So look at those. And yeah, there was one left just in the last episode that maybe you guys wanna chime in about. Okay. Anyways, have a wonderful day, full of miracles and blessings. I'm gonna go see my son graduate from high school today. Take care. Bye bye.